Thank you for joining the Once Changing the World, India's first Future Tech Meets Sustainable podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Hadley. Today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Zen Koh, who's a leader in the field of robotic rehabilitation and healthcare technology with over 2 decades of experience. Zen has held key positions, including managing director at Hokuma Pte Limited, where he drove advancements in robotic therapy for neurological disorders across the Asia Pacific region. Currently, he serves as the president and ambassador at IISART, the founder and CEO of Motus Academy. He is committed to enhance the quality of life for individuals with disabilities. So Zen, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. I wanted to start with the US-China relationships, because that seems to be completely sour at this point in time. So how is it like impacting the technological progress for China and its startup ecosystem?
Thanks, Eddie, for having me. Yes, this is a rather challenging and tricky questions. With the recent elections, I think there will be even more, in my personal view, more challenging relationship coming forth between the US and China. I think it's a rather evolving dynamics between the US and China, and it actually added to the complexity to the innovation landscape, especially for Chinese startups. The increasing restrictions and tensions has created both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, I think we face hurdles in accessing certain advanced technology for China. On the other hand, it actually fostered a drive towards self-reliance and innovation within China. And for countries like us in Singapore, I think it created opportunities. There are a lot of Chinese companies are now considering the possibility of using Singapore and other countries like Vietnam, etc., to set up their base to access to the international market. And I think this current situation is also creating an environment that will spur China's focus on advancing its own technological capabilities and also to cultivate a stronger, more global competitive startup ecosystem, particularly for AI, for robotics and healthcare technology.
I think what this is going to do, like you mentioned, obviously it's got cons, but also has a pros, because here we are when in a world which is becoming more and more dynamic with so much supposed to be hyper connected. But I think most of the nations are going inwards rather than going outwards. And the pros are that, I was just going through this interview of Professor Kaifi, and he was talking about his company 01.ai, and he was saying that how today's these large language models, they largely depend upon large data and GPUs, and then what's happening is that US is banning chips and stifling hardware growth, and also not just chips but also GPU access, but then what they are doing is finding other ways to kind of instead of looking at GPUs or more data, they're finding more to innovate. And I guess that's what but I hope that unity there'll be more strength, because I think the first time in human history, I think we come across a tech stack which is self-learning, artificial intelligence and these large language models, and I believe that together rather than all but yes, there are like you said, equal challenges as well as opportunity because of this, the way the China relationship is moving on. What inspired you to focus on robotics and neuro-rehabilitation?
Well, Eddie, just to add on to what you just commented, totally agree with you. The world should come together, particularly for health tech. So for me, my focus on robotics and neuro-rehab went way back. I'm from Singapore, so I did my undergraduate and postgraduate in Glasgow and Southampton. Moving back to Singapore, when I was working on my research fellowship, I was working on technology for elderly care, particularly for fall detection with the National University of Singapore. So my journey started when I start to see patients and elderly individuals who are experiencing with some frailty and mobility issues actually benefiting from our technology. So I then decided that we should try to create a vision to bridge the gap between human potential and medical science. So I got a chance when I was invested by my local government, the Economic Development Board, to start my first company. So I was really inspired to use technology, particularly robotics, to transform lives, particularly in helping individuals regain function of independence. I think that's very important, right? the quality of life largely depends on your functional ability. So my focus has always been on trying to integrate technology to create real, impactful rehabilitation solutions to support the recovery path that were previously unimaginable. So initially, I was creating a lot of technology, what we call assistive technology, AT technologies, for people with disabilities. So basically helping patients who have chronic conditions, basically deemed as not able to recover the full functions. But the reality check is once you have a neurological condition, the patient will experience certain percentage of the functional loss. I mean, there's no way you can get back to the 100%. But if you can start rehab earlier, actually can reduce that functional loss. So I started working on assistive technology for people with disability conditions, and then I moved further upstream to actually try to intervene at the acute, subacute phase so that we can actually reduce the functional loss and in hope to prevent more chronic cases or permanent functional loss or people with disabilities. So that actually got me really excited. And I've been doing that for the last 20 over years, starting several companies, as you mentioned earlier in the introduction, the Zurich-based Hokoma, and subsequently a Shanghai-based Fourier Intelligence. And now I'm moving back to Singapore and to start my new entity to continue promoting technology. And I really think that technology, particularly for healthcare technology, should not, experience any, barrier or, we should not be the victim of the geopolitical tensions because healthcare technologies are to help people. I'm hoping, and as of now, we have not actually seen any challenges from other countries like between the US and China about healthcare technology. I'm hoping that will never happen. I'm hoping that there's still exchange of innovations and ideas and technologies to help our patients and our clinicians using technologies to actually help the recovery.
There shouldn't be any barrier, not just for healthcare tech, but I think any forms of tech, because we're sitting at such a fantastic point of time, where I think the world can reach its true, capabilities. And that can only happen through technology and through hand holding. There is so much opportunity. And I think, there is no single tech. I think all of these tech stacks are sort of converging. AI is converging with AR, VR is converging Web 3.0, and all of these robotics and genetic editing and so on and so forth. I think in a phase where I think possibly in the next 10 years, we'll be seeing, technology, all parts of industry verticals, from education to healthcare to every possibly. And I don't think, the political tensions should hinder any of these technological exchange or innovations. You mentioned about elderly care and you mentioned about assistive care and then eventually, also helping in the acute phase. Maybe possibly explain assistive tech. What do you mean by assistive tech? I mean, are you talking about exoskeletons and the phase? What do you mean by that? And what are the interventions, when it comes to acute phase, both assistive technology and acute phase?
Eddie, I'm in total agreement with you. I think isolation is not the key, and technology is not just health tech should not have barrier. Then, unfortunately, we are not the politicians. Challenges between big countries that are competing among themselves. Technologies, as it advances, I think will only benefit through, as you already point out, collaborative approach. And we've seen that before all these geopolitical tensions happened, our world had progressed really fast. Unfortunately, it comes to the stage where countries are now competing and isolations and, protectionisms are happening. So you're seeing that different territories and continents are developing their own form of technologies. This is also something that I worried and feared about. To answer your questions, what is assistive technology? So this is a form of technology that has been rather universal. So we have been defining assistive technology, or AT as we call it, as all form of technology. It could become ICT mobility aids such as wheelchairs. You can consider exoskeleton as one of the mobility aid, even though it's not widely adopted due to a lot of challenges that we have been trying to solve for the past 10 years. And it can even as simple as, if I may say so, your glasses is a form of assistive tech. Any technology that can help to augment your human performance is a form of assistive technology. Speech language devices to help you communicate, the one that Stephen Hawking is using, eye gaze, eye control devices, brain control devices, your mobilized wheelchairs, your walking sticks, and your home improvement to help the elderly prevent fall, etc., etc. It's just too many. Basically, all technology to help improve the human functions and ability is assistive technology. So acute phase is a phase where the patient experiences an episode, and right after the ICU and surgery, that stage is, the patient's just recovery. A lot of vital signs could be challenging for us to actually use technologies on them. So the clinicians have to identify when their vital signs are stabilized at the acute phase, or subacute phase, we can actually start to implement some technologies to help to encourage them to make some mobilization and some trainings. So this is unlike the old school of thought, and which is proven that Neuro-Rehab, if you can start early, you can actually, in a safe environment, the patient actually have a better chance of recovery more of the functions. The brain is plastic. This is what we call the neuroplasticity principle. So if you can start the treatment earlier, you can actually create an alternative neural pathway to actually regain part of their functions. So, but if you wait too long, the opportunity wasted, and the patient sometimes may not be able to recover all the functions, or sometimes take a longer time to recover their functions. Yeah.
Right. So when you talk about neuro-rehabilitation, can you elaborate on that? Because I think neurological disorders are a huge problem. And can you maybe talk about, some of the most exciting advancements that you have seen in the space of neuro-rehabilitation?
Yes, neuro-rehabilitation is a huge field for neurological conditions. As you rightly point out, is a major problem for us. We eventually will experience some kind of neurological conditions. In many parts of the world, we've seen the common case, the most common one, stroke, right? And then an SCI, spinal cord injury, which is likely due to induce, maybe have accidents, motor accidents, or physical activities. But their spinal cord, if the position is very high up, they will experience either a complete SCI or incomplete SCI. For the complete SCI, basically neck down paralyzed, the chances of us actually recovering their functions are very limited. But their chances, new technologies are out there, but it is challenging. Incomplete patients are the patients that we have a very good chance of recuperating using the technology, using the Neuro-Rehab trainings, using the neuroplasticity functional training methods. And of course, we have Alzheimer's, Parkinson, MS, CP, etc. A lot of different kind of conditions. So some of the new technologies, exciting technologies, as you point out, AI, and even the neuromodulation AI, working with the Neuralink, Exoskeleton, Robotics, prosthesis for amputees, sensor-based wearable sensors. There are many things that we can do depending on the conditions of the patients. Their respective clinicians and the local neuro-rehab specialists will be able to recommend and even cater customized technology to meet their needs.
All of these neurological conditions that you spoke about, right from the stroke to spinal cord injury, these Alzheimer's, these are extremely challenging health disorders. You gave a glimpse about, how it could be helped via brain-computer interface, or possibly just, functional electrical stimulation, and so on and so forth. What's the challenges over there? Because I think, the cost would be a big challenge. How I think these interventions can be accessible?
You ask a really good question that I've been devoting my almost entire professional career working on. So as I mentioned, the neurological condition like stroke, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, neurodegenerative diseases, they are very personalized to each individual. You can have a patient that having stroke at the same position, but their symptom that they exhibit could be very different. Some of them can have a hemi feature that they walk limping on one side. Some of them not so obvious. So there's really no one size fit all solution to help using our technologies to help individuals regain function, improve mobility, enhance the quality of life, using a standardized therapy process, using a very standardized robotic, exoskeleton or VR or AI driven system. So this really personalized situation creates huge challenges for us in creating broader adoption, because there's no economy of scale. It's not like I make a mobile phone that I can make millions of units in the factories, stretch short, and then I can reduce the cost. Come on, Eddie, look at an iPhone. It is so complex that it's only about like $2,000, right? But our exoskeleton, frankly, the parts put together, perhaps is not even that cost. But the challenges that we are facing is that we have to really customize it, and then reduce the smaller quantity and high cost. And that limited access to technology. Not to mention, these are medical devices that have to go through very strict regulatory hurdles like the FDA, the EUC, MDR, and the respective countries' medical device requirements. We have no quarrels with that. We think as medical device health tech providers, we have to really adhere to one very important rule of thumbs, right? The first rule is do no harm. If we cannot use the technology to help the patient recover, safety always must come first, right? And to do that, we have to meet the local regulatory guideline. But some of these guidelines are so stringent that actually put a lot of business out of a lot of startup out of business. But we are working with regulatory bodies to find ways, because we are not invasive technology. We think that we should be given enough guidance to make sure that we are safe to be adopted, but yet not overly regulated that you just stifle the startup. So these are just some of the challenges that we are facing. And last but not least, because it's so customer, so personalized, and the regulatory, the cost, over the last 30 years, we are a very new industry. There are many really good technology startups out there, but they are not big. They are maybe in the 30 to 100 million kind of range. And that created a lot of what I call the fragmentation. So I have been preaching a concept called Rehabilitation 4.0, which basically runs on three major concepts. First, consolidation. Second, standardization. And last but not least, what I call the interoperability of the devices. Let me try to explain this concept, Eddie. Imagine if you buy a computer, a laptop, and then the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor are sold to you individually. And for crying out loud, you actually had to write your own code to connect your monitor and your keyboard and your mouse and yours. You even had to write your own OS to actually get it working. I mean, you will say this is crazy. And to make things worse, if you want to have a personalized mouse or you want to buy a bigger monitor, you have to write another code again. Well, Eddie, this is the reality we are facing in the Neuro-Rehab field. The clinicians are going out there to the companies buying device A, technology B, equipment C, and then they had to try to integrate this technology into their current clinical pathway. That already is challenging. Why is that so? Because our clinicians are already overworked. There are not enough clinicians for the increasing populations of the neurological condition patients. So they are already overworked. They are already very stretched. And now you give them a device, a technology that's supposed to help them improve the efficiency, help them in their work, but instead creating more work for them because they have to try to understand how to integrate this technology into the current clinical pathway. And they'll be responsible for the clinical outcome. They will be responsible for the ROI. So you can imagine that in the earlier phase of our career, we face huge resistance from clinicians who just say, no, I'd rather use my head because it's just too complex. So the formation of Motus Academy and a lot of associations is to work with the clinicians to bring the stakeholder groups together to create some form of consolidation and standardizations and make the system interoperable. And with that, we can use the data meaningfully. So these are some of the biggest challenges that we are facing. The lack of standardized protocol, limited awareness among healthcare providers, and then that actually impede the use of such technologies. But as we move forward with continual advancement over the last 10 years or so, with the broader clinical studies and growing support from healthcare policies and even some insurance company, I think we can expect this intervention to become more accessible within the next decade or so. My last company managed to raise funds from SoftBank, Aramco. So you can see that mainstream investors are starting to sit up and notice the importance of using technologies for healthcare for neurological conditions. So as costs increase, as investment money comes in, we can see that companies are able to produce more evidence, and as the efficacy emerges, I think neuro-rehab technologies will likely become a stable. And this is what I'm pushing for my entire career, and becoming a stable and a routine neurological care interventions, especially for healthcare systems that really recognize the benefits and how it can bring to a faster and a more effective recovery pathway to the non-neurological patients. Yeah.
Right. So more power to you, Zen, for, pushing this, your vision of Rehab 4.0. And I guess this problem that you mentioned about standardization, interoperability, consolidation, I think this exists, I think, in almost all new tech stack, because
exactly.
I've been invested in AR, VR, MR, metaverse, and I've realized that over there also, I think, we're trying to struggle for, standardization or even interoperability. But I like, you mentioned that possibly in the next 10 years, maybe there would be a little bit of more standardization and more entity, built in, so that, there is no problems for the leveraging these tech stack. Now, you mentioned about, robotics being used in the healthcare industry. How successful is that today? Because today the robots we see are extremely clumsy. It does a specific thing, very very slow. It's largely controlled, where a human is controlling at the back. At the healthcare, I mean, the situation is extremely complex. So do you see a robot possibly evolving, and maybe we be able to build a robot that can maybe understand a patient's needs and tends to the demand autonomously? You think that's possible? Because, yes, there are people who are working on general purpose robot, but that still seems to be far away with the current robotic conditions. So it will be great if you could talk about what the robots can do currently in the healthcare and what they will be able to do in the next 10 years.
To answer your question, it takes time for all form of technologies to eventually evolve into what you just mentioned, if I may put it into like precise medicine, personalized medicine. To do that, what do we need? We need data. And as earlier on mentioned, the industry is so fragmented. You have so many so-called robotics and technology systems out there. They're running on their own system. The data collections are not even standardized. And then the clinicians have to figure out from machine A to machine B, different form of data. Even human look at it, don't know how to use the data properly. So AI machine learning, which we think will be the future, will have a hard time analyzing this data. But as we move forward, as while we are speaking, I just came back from Spain, attending a very important meeting called the IISART in La Granja. Basically, we have all agreed to form some form of consortium, working with some of the top reference centers to actually standardize the data collection framework. Once we can get this small baby step forward and encourage more industry players to adopt this system, we'll be able to collect and consolidate more data. And this data will then be interpreted using the AI system, which can help us gain insights into the patient's conditions, even identifying potential intervention that the human experts are missing out. And you see that in some of the MRI, CT readings using AI, they even spot cancer cells that humans sometimes missed out. So we think that for rehab field, it will be that stage. And coming to a personalized and very effective or very interactive robotic system that is backed up with the VR sensors, etc., to help the patients actually improve the clinical recovery process. To do that, we need to, as I earlier mentioned, the consolidation had to happen, the standardization had to happen. So that's why we are working so hard to move it forwards. In the next 5 to 10 years, I have total confidence that day will come. So I think for the rehab field, we are moving towards that direction as well, creating the hardware and software and some form of standardization. So new companies or existing companies will not have to reinvent the wheel. And then we are able to share and collect the data, which is also very challenging for health tech. It's always the last frontier for adoptions of new technologies. So you can see the military or other industry adopting new technologies very, very early on stage. But you will see that healthcare will always using a bit outdated, like one generation behind technology. And rightfully so, because we always have to test it and double test it to make sure that it's safe. Because we're dealing with patients that cannot defend themselves. We have to make sure that the technology that we apply on them to help them in their recovery is actually assisting them in a positive way, not in a negative way. So yes, right. To answer your question in short, I truly believe that as we come together and bring the 5 stakeholder groups, like, the patient and the caregivers, the clinicians, the doctors, the therapists, the medical professions, the researchers, the scientists, the professors in the universities and all the labs, and also the industry and the startups, the CEOs of the companies, and also the policymakers of the ministries, or even the CEOs of hospital CFO, all coming together. We can build an industry that eventually will consolidate and benefit our patients for the long run.
So Zen, you were speaking of virtual reality. Can you share how virtual reality is creating an impact in the healthcare industry? And also it would be great if you could share some, patient success story.
So with the virtual reality, what we are trying to create is what we call the gamification of functional training. So what's that? So basically, we need the patient to do activities that are functional, not just, okay, let me explain functional activities or functional training in a more interesting way. Imagine, right, Eddie, you want to be a good golf player, and you know that be a good golf player, you need to have your core strength, you need this strength and that strength. You can go to the gym, you can pump your bicep, tricep and everything, you become like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're very strong. But throughout that process, you never touch a golf club, you never hit a golf ball. And then once you're really strong, you know that you have what it takes to be Tiger Woods. You're going to hit that ball. What do you think will be the outcome? So if you want to play golf well, you literally have to be on the course and hit the ball on the range, like day in, day out, and then go on the green to actually play your 18 hole, whatever, right? And that's how you get better. And you can supplement it with some strength training or whatever, cardio training. So for functional training, it's the same thing. What you train is what you get. If you want the patient to walk again, you want the patient to be able to perform functional tasks like, going shopping, picking up the apples and putting into the grocery bags, they have to do that. But it is not realistic for us to bring the patient out into the supermarket and bring the patient out to take a bus, because the danger factor is too high. The risk is too high versus the outcome. So we do it indoor with the clinician in a safe environment, strengthening them. But then we don't get a functional training. With the VR, we create an interactive, immersive, augmented environment, and using gamifications, we actually create exercise that are almost like game. So the patients will interact, will be interested and feel challenged and motivated to actually get involved. And this is key for neuro-rehab training. Functional training, self-initiated movement, motivated patients, right? And these are very important. If the patients are not motivated, they say, no, I don't want to do it. Or they're not initiating the movement, the machines are doing it all for them, then it's passive. This is not rehab anymore. Basically it's like, the machine moving them or the therapist moving them. So the self-initiated movement create the neural reconnections that fire the neuroplasticity. Yeah. So the functional trainings are the activities they're doing in a virtual environment, which you can create using the VR system. With the VR goggles, with the immersive environment or the Meta in the future, we can get a patient in an environment, taking a bus, maybe driving a car, maybe going to the supermarket in a very safe environment. Patient can't tell the difference with the technology that we're having now. Of course, they can tell the difference, but as we progress, it gets so realistic and that the patients, don't really feel too much of the difference when they transit into the real life environment.
Right. Yeah. Virtual reality is it's growing phenomenally, and I think it's touching all parts of life, be it in the space of healthcare or education or entertainment, gaming. And I'm sure in the next few years is really show its, utility. Motus Academy and IISART. Motus Academy is largely in the space of education. Are you guys also building hardware, services, solutions, and what kind of partnerships that have you guys formed at this point in time with the healthcare industry?
Right. Motus Academy is actually a non-profit organization that is actually set up in Switzerland a couple of years ago, together with Professor Robert Wiener from ETH Zurich and Professor Jose Pons from Sherry Ryan Ability Lab and the Chicago Northwestern University. So when the three of us come together, we want to create a platform that is dedicated to bring together academia, industry, and healthcare professionals to promote and advance the field for rehab technology. So our vision is to create a platform where the global exchange of knowledge and research can be shared openly so that the challenges and problems that we mentioned earlier can be, so-called avoided. Yeah. So we want to actually accelerate this global exchange of knowledge. The adoption of technology is key, but many times it is impeded by the understanding of how to use the technology. So we think that through education, we aim to actually foster partnerships also to encourage these innovations and the adoptions. With more adoption, got more data, more industry coming in, more investment, then we can actually improve the clinical outcomes worldwide. So the other association, IISART, which is IISART, stand for the International Society for Advanced Robotic Technology, was formed even earlier, more than 15 years ago when I was still with my Zurich-based startup. So it was set up as an apex body, bringing together the top industry players, clinical players, and also, clinicians and researchers to actually work together to create some form of standardization. So we have 5 work groups: the healthcare economics, which is trying to make sure that the technology out there, the reimbursement, the ROI will be able to be in a positive way, encourage adoption of technology. Because if the technologies are not having positive ROI, if you cannot prove the healthcare economics, sometimes countries and certain institutions will be finding very challenging, very reserved in adopting technology. They're creating challenges for companies, and if companies are not successful, the companies died out, then no one is commercializing the technology. Then we have the educational work group, which is working something quite similar to what Motus is doing, but very focusing on sending product and technology information out there, sharing the PowerPoints or white paper that we created so that people can use it to work on it, for lectures, for speeches. And then we have the third group, which is the event group that actually we runs an event every 2 years. Last year, we have the Rehab Week in Singapore, where our Deputy Prime Minister, Minister Heng, was our guest of honor. Next year, every 2 years, next year, it will be in Chicago, hosted by the Sherry Ryan Ability Lab. Such platforms will bring together all the stakeholder groups to actually interact, exchange knowledge, and actually, promote the field. The fourth group is a standard group, which actually work with the ISO, ASTM, etc., to actually understand and support and intervene to push the standard of the global rehab technology or rehab robotic technologies, implementation. And last but not least is the promotion group. Promotion group basically are groups that actually put all this information that I mentioned online or offline, letting more people know about what we are doing. Yeah. So these are the 2 groups that we're working on. So IISART and Motus, we do not directly build technologies, but we have members, companies, or laboratories that are building technologies. So we are also advising, particularly myself, advising a few companies in Singapore and in the US to develop technologies. So just to let you know, likely I will be involved in some companies and even raise money to start a new entity to actually try to adopt and implement what I just mentioned, the consolidation and standardization and the ecosystem of the robotic system solutions based instead of hardware based. Yeah.
Then how do you think the role of AI is being leveraged in the healthcare space? Because these large language models, Gen AI has taken over the world, and data is the largest problem. But, that here is these LLMs, these Gen AI taking data and this is really, really useful. How is the AI there in the healthcare space?
So no longer is the case where the patient comes in and there's only 20 functional games or trainings on the computer system. Doesn't matter what kind of conditions you are. Of course, you can customize it a little bit manually. So it depends a lot on the clinician's observations and skill sets and experience to make that manual adjustment. With AI and with data, we can see that this personalized and adaptive therapies will happen. So, but as you know, with AI, we need to process vast amount of data from the patient interactions with the robotics and Neuro-Rehab technologies, so that we can refine the treatment plans in real time. And then this definitely will allow for very optimized recovery trajectories. But LLM require a lot of data. Rightly mentioned large language models. So the current systems are not really meant for I would say for Neuro-Rehab. There are many reasons for that. First and foremost, data that we collected are really very private. As the patient, due to advocacy, we have to protect the data. So it's very, very confidential. Each of the hospitals that collect the data, within their hospital guideline, they are not allowed to share the data. They're in the national guideline for the HR7, etc. So, which created a big problem for us. As you earlier mentioned, there are now large enough so-called adoptions of the technologies. And to make it worse, they are adopted in individual hospitals spread across the world. And every country, every hospitals will have their own rule of thumbs to protect the patient data, rightfully so. And they're not sharing the data, and data are not allowed to get out of the hospital wall. So we are not able to actually get access to this universal global data that we have been, with the machines out there over the last 30 years. So I think we have to somehow come together to agree to disagree and find a way to safely utilize this data together as a global community. And with that, I think the LLMs, the AI and machine learning will then be able to create, significant benefits to optimize that recovery trajectories. Potentially we can be using the data to create virtual coaching support, making rehab effective and accessible, even lower the cost and shorten that recovery time. Because I was actually in talk with a researcher, couple of months ago, and we were talking about, if we have enough data that we train the patients and we see the patients going through this training, exhibit these kind of behaviors, having these kind of clinical outcomes. So the next patient comes in using the machines, doing the training, perform similar kind of recovery. We can actually safely predict a similar kind of outcome and then customize the program for them to actually make sure that they will recover on time or maybe even in a safe, accelerated way. And this can all use data to do a prediction and personalized adaptive therapies. For now, this is something that we hope to achieve, but very difficult because the data sets that we have are just too small. So to answer your question, I think it will play a transformative role in the future. But to get there, we have to first achieve the challenges that we are facing now. A very fragmented industry that require consolidation, a lack of standardization of data and hardware's industry that we somehow had to agree to come together to seek some kind of standardization, and the interoperability of the system, which is also a challenge because if the different systems are not linking to each other, then the data collection, data sharing, and the AI implementation in the future will be a nightmare. Yeah.
Would you be able to paint a picture of what the world would look like in the next 10 years, when all of these kind of comes together, these challenges of that you're trying to solve, rehabilitation 4.0, what do you think the healthcare industry would look like in the next 10 years if we are able to solve all those challenges that you mentioned about standardization, interoperability, and consolidation?
In my view, I think in an idealized situation in 5 to 10 years, I do see technology such as AI, robotics, VR, even telemedicine, etc., wearable technologies coming together, create a seamlessly interoperable system. The ecosystem is even at the earliest onset, identifying potential risks. So for healthy subjects in your daily life, maybe the watch that you're wearing, the sensors, maybe like, the smart garment that with the sensors within measure your different vital signs, actually recommend your diet, your exercise, even preventing neurological condition, your stroke, a stroke or whatever from happening. So in the ideal way, we are out of business. Or as we got this data, if unfortunately the patient still get into that condition that we call Neuro-Rehab, we can have very surgical and precise intervention right from the onset. No more guesswork. We know exactly what to do, so that we optimize the exact treatment protocol. The patient will not, lose time in the treatment. So we know exactly when and what to do. And with that, I think I see a lot of positive, developments in conferences and meetings, particularly the last meeting I attended in Spain, Madrid. Many of the major players, societies, academic researchers, we are coming together now. We are now in talk to form some form of consortium where we put together a framework to agree to build a standardized data collection methodology and agree to share this data, strictly adhering to the protection of the patient's, confidentiality, and using this data to build the next generation technology. And with the hardware, software standardizations, I see that on the upstream, even to the downstream, we will have technologies that can be adaptive, accessible, and effective. Really will change how people look at technology. So I think this will really optimize care for all. So the elderly patients at home, people with sports injury or neurological conditions, or even healthy subjects that have not experienced that episode will all benefit from this seamlessly integrated ecosystem. So this is what I think will be the future of rehabilitation and healthcare technology. Yeah.
Zen, thank you so much for taking time and being part of the podcast. Wish you and your team very best at Motus Academy and IISART. Yes, if we are able to solve this problem that you going after, rehabilitation 4.0, where we kind of find a way to consolidate all the data and standardize it in a way where there is, using it for the right purpose, I think the things that we'll be able to build out of it will be really, really awesome, right? From telemedicine that you spoke about to personalized medicine and robotics and your neuro-rehabilitation use for it. I think it'll be like a fantastic world. And I hope that we break away from, that narrowness of just going inwards and go, because the world kind of demands it. We are in a point of time where we need to be more interconnected and take a collaborative approach, because through that we will be able to make sure that this technology will be accessible to a larger population. So more power to you, Zen. Keep on doing what you're doing. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Thank you, Zen. Really, really appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.